So, welcome back as we continue to work with this face here inside of Maya. So, in the last video, we left off with looking at how we could start this process of modeling this face and get things started. But then we also took a look at how, by setting up our topology properly, that we could easily insert loop edges when we need them later on in our modeling process. So what I want to continue to look at right now is continuing to move forward and actually moving this model that we have so far over into the bridge of the nose and getting this stuff started and taking this stuff, kind of in here and going the across the eye and getting some of this stuff lined out for the eye, as it were. So one thing that I want to do is I'm going to come in here and go to edge mode. And in edge mode, I'm going to grab these particular edges right here. And I'm going to extrude these. Now, normally I would actually just move them, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale them out. By scaling them, I can get them to move very quickly and get them to move in the directions that I want to. I'm going to scale it this way. Let's just pull this over a little bit like this, scale this. So the reason why I'm doing this is, and I'm working with this as a scale, is because you want to get used to how your different tools can work for you and the benefit of how you use them. Because you can always use your scale and rotate tools in other ways besides just doing normal scaling and rotating with them. They can also actually quickly move along your modeling process if you use them correctly. So I've got this, and I'm going to kind of bring this down in here. Let's spread this out a little bit. And that looks good. That looks good. And this is going to be a little bit different when I do some extra cuts into this. But like we said in the beginning, I want to make sure that I have the big details first and then go back in and start adding in the little fine minutia details. So let's go in here and let's get these pieces. Oh, we didn't want to do that. Let's undo that and get these guys right around here. I'm going to extrude these. Once again, I'll just use my scale tool. Just scale this out a little bit. I can always scale it up. I can always scale it back this way. And then over here, I'm just going to move it forward a little bit. And I'll come in here and just grab that one edge right there. And let's pull this edge back. And pull this back. And you can start to see as I'm moving this around, it has this very spider web look to everything. So, if you continue just to move this stuff little by little, it's going to start to make sense as you continue to build on your model. Now, the thing that you don't want to do, and we talked about this before, I don't want to make these polygons too small in the beginning because it's going to mean more work. It's going to mean more stuff to have to move to get my shape to do what I needed to do. So I'm just going to spread these guys out just a little bit more so I can use that area a little bit better. Alright, so you can start to see how these polygons are beginning to turn. And when I'm looking at this, and what I mean by these turns that are going on in here, you can see how this is kind of spider webbing out from that central, kind of from that central place. And as this keeps moving over, it's going to continue to have the same effect. I'm going to come in here once again, and let's get the edges right here, and I'm going to extrude these. So we're going to extrude these once again. Let's bring them over here almost to center. And I'm going to go in here and go back to, let's not do that. I'm going to go back in here to vertex mode and just kind of pull these right towards the center. Now, one thing I'm going to do in just a second that's going to make this a lot easier when I'm looking at this. So here I want to make sure, because like you say, you want to make sure you're making a movement in your front view as well as your side view. You don't want to keep all this stuff stacked up inside of your side view and not be moving any of these pieces inside of there. So let's pull this back a little bit. Let's make sure I'm using these polygons to the best of their abilities. Let's just kind of spread this open. Now, here where you get down to this little part of the eye socket, you want to keep that very tight, but this other stuff can kind of be a little bit more spread open. And I'm trying to get that little dip right there that he apparently has going on. So that doesn't look too bad. Let's keep this moving. So got this little bridge across the nose right here. And let's pull this down here. So it looks like I need an additional cut like right about here. And I'll add that in there in just a second. So one thing that I like to do with this is when I get it to a basic level, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go in here and go to my duplicate special, and I'm going to make a instance. I'm not going to do a copy, I'm going to do an instance, and I'm going to scale this negative on X, because if I look right now, this is my X going through here, and before I scale it, I'm just going to change my pivot, put my pivot right in the center of the face. And I'm going to make an instance, and when I apply this, it makes, by doing -1 on the scale, it basically just flips my model to the other side. So it gives me a symmetrical face at this point. If I look at this in perspective very, very quickly, I'm going to turn off my reference image just for a second. Let's look at this in perspective. If I hit 3 on my keyboard to see it smooth, I can actually start to see, let's turn off the x-ray for a second, I can actually start to see, well, I can see where my face is actually coming together, and it's coming together rather nice. There's some things that I would probably want to do to clean up a little bit of stuff on this, but at the level that I'm at, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, and I can continue to move forward, and you can see my actual polygons and my poly counts are not that high. I'm going to turn on display, heads up display, and turn on my poly count. And you can see right now for poly count that half of the face, so one half of the face right now is about 27 polygons, which is about 54 tries. And this is actually pretty low right now. And if I look at the whole thing altogether, I'm only looking at 108 triangles for the whole entire face, and then 54 in faces. So it gives me, you know, when you look at your heads up display, it'll give you your try count as well as give you your poly count. And I always try to make sure that my try count is the one that I'm paying most attention to, and not really that the faces, because that's the quad itself. I want to see what the triangle for that is. And kind of like what we talked about earlier, when you're talking about those try and poly counts, realistically, whatever your poly count is, you know, basically you're gonna have to double that to get your try count. So it's just a quick, it's just a, you know, if you didn't know those things, it's just something simple. So we look at try counts, and excuse me, where those two different approaches come from is one is primarily looked at more for the world of gaming. So gaming, we really look at try counts. We look at how many triangles did you use to make this model. Whereas in, you know, other disciplines, we really kind of look at poly counts because we really care more about the quads. But for games, triangles rule supreme. Everything's going to be triangulated for a game. There's not much that doesn't triangulate when you have it inside of a game. So it's really all about those triangle counts. So you're talking about your game models. So that's just one of those things to keep in mind as you do it. So one thing I want to do to my face right now is I'm going to come in here and go to edge mode, and I'm going to select these edges straight down the center, right here in the center of this. And I'm going to go in here, and I'm not going to do a edge loop. I'm not going to insert an edge loop. What I'm going to do is grab those components, so grab those edge components, and I'm going to say I want to connect components. That's a great way to make sure that the edge that you cut through is completely dead center in those polygons. So as you can see, it basically just connected them. You know, it does what it sounds like it says. It just connects them together. So now that I've got those guys connected, I'm gonna clean this up just a tiny just a smidge right here. And you can start to see I'm adding in that extra topology around the eye, and it's giving me an even better defined shape. Because you got to remember, when I first started this, I only had 8 polygons around the eye, and that was my starting shape. And that was actually already pretty good. And now with adding in this extra level of density, adding in some more topology, I'm able to keep my eye very clean and add this additional topology in here, and it works fairly well for what I need it to. So, that's one of the advantages of keeping your poly counts relatively low. You're able to quickly work with this stuff and move things around and kind of re-envision what you're modeling without having to sit around and beat yourself up because you might have put a piece in. You got to go back out and decimate your mesh down and kind of bring your mesh back down to where it should be. By using this method here, I'm actually able to keep it down pretty low the whole entire time that I'm working with it. And if I need additional things, then of course I can put some additional work into it. But right now it doesn't really need that. So it's just a rule of thumb when you're working with these polygonal faces like this. So let's get this. I'm going to get this kind of flowing over here a little bit better. Just going to use these guys to the best of my abilities. The bigger they are, they will subdivide actually quite nicely. But look at this with 3 proxy. Not bad, not bad, not bad. So let's finish out this nose over here. Let's go ahead and finish this nose as we come into this. So what I want to really end up having on this is as this comes around. So I've got this guy kind of coming around like this, and I'm just going to come in here, back in edge mode. I'm just going to extrude this, and I'm going to extrude it right about there. Go back to vertex. Now you'll notice that I don't do a lot of different movements when I'm doing this. So I don't really go too far too quickly, because that's the one thing that can happen. If you go too quick, your model's going to get away from you. And what I mean by that is you're going to end up with pieces in your model, and you're like, well, how did I get that in there? Why is that in there? What was I thinking when I did that? And if you just took the time to realistically, do this in pieces, especially when you get to areas like this that you have to work a little bit harder to get them to look correct. You're going to, I'm being honest with you, you're going to love having spent the extra time to get this stuff looking correct before before you just ran away with it. Because if you just run away with it, you're going to, once again, not like organic modeling. You're going to want to stop doing it. And you shouldn't want to stop. You should want to do it as much as you can. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to overload yourself and make yourself and wig yourself out to the point that you don't want to actually do this kind of work anymore. So I'm just going to bring this down. Let's merge these together. So looking at this now, I want to go ahead and give myself an extra row in here. So let's go to edge. Let's get this edge all the way down here. Let's extrude it right there. Let's go to vertex mode. Just gonna, as always, move these guys in and clean them up together. Right about here. So all that stuff's nice and neat and clean. As always, we talk about we want to keep this topology as clean as possible. So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to come back in here and let's continue finishing off the nose. And let's extrude this.